So today I am so excited to have Badass Buddha, aka Dr. Lori Monaco, with us today. How are you, Dr. Lori?
I'm good, Gabby. I'm great. How you doing?
I am good. And I was just telling you how it's awesome to see Badass Buddha on the Zoom link. I don't know if they'll be able to see it, but I was like, I have to use that in the intro because clearly that kind of pertains to who you are. So I definitely want to start hearing about who you are, a little bit about your journey and how you created and why you created Align Yourself Incorporated.
Where to begin? Where to begin? Um, so Align Yourself Inc. What I do now, I have a lot of hats I play. A lot of hats I wear, not play.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't make any sense. So it's been a long day, and so here we go. All right. So by trade, I am a chiropractic physician. I have been a chiropractor for 20. I just celebrated my 22nd year.
Okay.
And yes, I know you're all thinking I must have been like 10 when I graduated. Yes, you would be right. I was like 10 years old when I
Exactly.
graduated. So I've been a chiropractic physician, and with my school required us to do a lot of patient education. So I started doing public speaking in that realm, and I loved it. I fell in love with public speaking. So I've been a public speaker for a really long time. Then I practiced for a while. Then, but within a couple of years, though, I started teaching, and I was teaching post-secondary, so after high school, and I was teaching anatomy, physiology, human anatomy, physiology, pathology, neuroanatomy, physiology, and I did that for about 18 years.
Mm-hmm.
In that time, I was also still practicing, but at that point, it was part-time, and I was teaching more full-time, and I love it. And then I hit a really, really awful place in my life when
Mm-hmm.
I was about 45. So it was just about 6 years ago.
Okay.
And I mean, it was rock bottom, and it
Mm-hmm.
totally threw me off, a very bad depression. And I sort of woke up, they call it all kinds of things, spiritual awakening. It wasn't, I don't even know if I would call it that, but it was the dark night of the soul for sure. And it took me about 6 months to get out of the depression. 3 weeks of it were like suicide level.
Mm-hmm.
And my whole life blew up in one day. Like everything just hit the fan. And again, it took me all those months to get out. In that time period, I realized like I had to come clean on what element of it I played a role in. I mean, I wasn't the only one playing the role here, but I had to take responsibility or accountability for my piece.
Mm-hmm.
And what really threw me again was the fact that this is an individual who's done personal development since I was 19. Back in the day in the 80s, I'm aging myself. Back in the day, it was called self-help. And
Okay.
so I had gone to like these seminars, and I knew like how to teach people this stuff. And I was a holistic practitioner. I was around meditators and body workers and energetic healers long before people ever were into this.
Got it.
And yet I kept making the same mistakes and same choices
Mm-hmm.
throughout my whole adult life. And then when it culminated to that moment at the time I was 46 years old, by the time I was starting to come out of it. So I went to this massive personal growth, like massive transformation. And it was at the end that I said, you know what? I don't ever want somebody to have to go through what I went through. I don't ever want somebody to have the depression that I've had or feeling that low. And I said, you know what? I'm going to do what I do best, which is teach.
Mm-hmm.
So I got my coaching certification, but I always like to say that I am a life coach. I mean, that's what the certification is in, but I love to consider myself as an authenticity teacher because
Mm.
in the end, that's what I had to do. I had to become my authentic self, someone that was
Right.
never fully out there all those years. And that's where the part of the depression came in. But then
Mm.
all the other bad choices that I made all stemmed around that. And so, because I was a chiropractor, and we're taught that alignment of the spine is what, you want everything to be aligned so that the nervous system is functioning properly. I thought to myself, okay, well, my sitting was great. Why was I still messing up? Why was I
Mm-hmm.
still making really bad choices? So it's not just one piece. And I was overweight, but I was at that point, but I was also like in a better headspace. And
Mm-hmm.
so I started to realize I'm like, oh my gosh, there's more to it than just aligning, like one piece, like a physical
Right.
piece.
Mm-hmm.
So I came up with what I call the 7 core pillars of alignment, and
Mm-hmm.
that's to align with your authentic self. And so the name of the business really kind of transformed to align yourself. So you have to, as long as you meet all these things to align yourself properly, you will live a life that's abundant and happy, because it's the life because it's your life, not somebody else's. So that's where it came from. That was the long story. So like, those people that make a long story longer, that's me. That's really me.
Well, that gives me definitely a lot to work with and ask you more questions about. So like you said, obviously, and I've seen chiropractic before, we think of aligning the spine, but like you said, there's a lot more to us spiritually, physically, mentally, that we need to align. What would you say is kind of the first step of really finding your authentic self? Maybe someone who's just lost, doesn't know from your experience in helping others, what is kind of that first step?
Oh God, it's the same step that I give to everybody, whether I'm working with them as a coach, like one-on-one, or with even workshops that I teach. Like, I mean, I can even teach somebody in corporate, but I'll ask the same questions at the end and I'll give them a handout. And it starts with this. And I encourage everybody to do this if they haven't done this already. So the first one is, you say to yourself, you have to discover who you are first, all of it, even the parts you don't like. So you have to say, what do I like about myself? What do I love about myself? So you're writing like 4 columns. What do I like? What do I love? What do I dislike? And what do I hate? And you want to cringe sometimes when you're talking about, like, why would anybody want to write what they hate? We're trying to make ourselves better and blah, blah, blah. But in order to be authentic, you have to know your truth. You have to know where your starting point is. So if you're starting on the lower side and you want to be here, you have to know here. You have to get familiar with here, even if it stinks. And I could use a more colorful choice of words, but I'll be clean, because I'm known for that. I have a friend of mine who's a co-host of the show that we do together, and she speaks Spanish and English. So she'll say, but I'm trilingual. I speak Spanish, English, and profanity. And
Right.
so I'm pretty good at profanity myself. So
I
I'm
feel that.
bilingual, English and profanity. So, so so that's the first piece. And then then I'll ask them another question. I'll say, okay, once you establish that, and even if the hate column is really long, or the dislike column is longer than the like, don't worry about it. It's going to change. But again, you have to know the starting point. You have to know what needs to change. Then you say, who am I now and who do I want to be? And so if you say, well, who am I now? And again, absolute truth. And then you say, okay, well, this is who I am now, and this is who I want to be. And that helps you decide, like, the in-between part, how you're going to get from point A to point B is what you figure out as you go, whether you're going to like do coaching or get a mentor, or just do a deep dive on your own, if you are disciplined enough to do it. But that's where it starts. And I think a lot of people, like, the word, I don't want the word to get oversaturated, like there's certain words that'll come out that are the catch-all things. So right now, everybody's loving authenticity and they love saying that word. And I want it to not get oversaturated, sort of like the word transparency. I cringe when I hear that word now, because they'll say, oh, in business, we want to be transparent.
Yeah.
And the reality is, you can never be 100% transparent. You can't let your employees know every single
No.
piece. So you say, we are going to be as transparent, like you have a stipulation understanding. So with authenticity, people tend to say, oh, I'm authentic, but they're not, because with authenticity, you also have to be vulnerable. And a lot of people don't like vulnerability. And, thank goodness for Brene Brown, who made us a lot, like, really open to the idea of vulnerability. But I swear, before she came out, with all her research and all her books, I think there were a lot of people that were just so terrified of of vulnerability, not realizing that, as she even says, that it is it's courageous. It's courageous to be vulnerable, So that's where we usually start. And then, you get people that get a bad taste of their mouth. They're like, oh, I don't want to, I don't like that part of me. It's totally fine. It's totally fine. But there will be a point where you're not going to say that anymore. You're going to, like, I like that. And then they'll say, well, what about the fact that I hate this stuff about me? I said, listen, I did this exercise for myself. And one of the things that showed up on my hate actually is part of my love side now. Like, it's what I hated about myself when I started my journey. And now it's actually the piece that I love about myself.
Oh, okay.
So that's how you start. And then you build up from that.
And so obviously we just said what kind of the first couple steps are for you. So then I'm curious, what is kind of like your ideal client then? Who do you typically help solve these problems?
So, I mean, I've worked with people of all ages. Like
Of
I've
course.
worked with, uh, men, women, I've worked with teens and I'm comfortable working that way. But I have to say that
Mhm.
my ideal client really are individuals who are feeling stuck, who are feeling like I'm done, like
Mhm.
I can't do this anymore. And they're feeling compelled, like pulled that they need to make a change. But they don't know how, they don't know how to start. I love work people who are real newbies. I
Mhm.
mean, I've worked with people who've worked with other coaches before, they're at a
Right.
different level, and I'm fine with that. But I really love working with the people who depression or anxiety,
Mhm.
who are, at a certain age thinking I'm too
Mhm.
old to make a change or this is
Right.
really
Someone
not
you can
good.
kind of
And,
mold rather than trying to do new teaching. You kind of get to play with them a little bit.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. Because I like getting them to that level where they really fall in love with themselves. I
Mhm.
mean, that's like where they're at a place where they're so unhappy
Mhm.
with really who they are. They're unhappy with their life, but in the end it's really with themselves.
Right.
But then that and then switch it to where they love themselves so much.
Mhm.
Um because again, I've been there and I know what it's like to hate yourself and
Mhm.
then to fall in love with yourself and say, wow, I mean, and not feel guilty. Like, what was I
Right.
doing the last 20 years? I just wasted.
Mhm.
But to just say, I went through it. I guess it had to happen.
Mhm.
And I'm here now. And what am I going to do now?
Absolutely. And I think that's another word, kind of self-love, that can also be almost saturated sometimes, but I know that's a word and a term that I love because I know for myself of just having that has been a game changer and just life-changing for me to have that self-love and just to love yourself for your flaws and for, the things that you're good at and that you can give.
Absolutely. Because, like, we're not perfect. Nobody's
Right.
perfect. And we strive for that because we see
Hmm.
perfection in advertisements and I mean get a little tuck here, get a little whatever, and hey, listen, there's no judgment on that. I
Right.
mean, I'm pushing, I'm 51. I lost a bunch of weight, got a little sag over here, and I'm like, good like that, So there's no judgment in getting people to do those things, but you want to still love yourself. Like you
Hmm.
don't use those as like I love myself, and it's funny for me to even say that because I never felt that way.
Right. I can
My
say that.
my whole
Yeah.
like from preteen, teen, up until 45, almost 46 years old. But I love myself. So if I'm going to change something, I'm changing it because I feel that it doesn't represent what's on the inside.
Right. Right.
Not that I think, oh, this is going to make me look better. I feel ugly. It's no,
Hmm.
no. Like I transformed my mental and emotional state,
Hmm.
but my weight lagged behind. I mean, I had gotten big when I was in my 30s and from the beginning of my 40s. And then I lost a little bit of weight, but I was still bigger. And then last year, in fact, I was like, I'm blaming COVID, but I did gain an extra 10 pounds. So I'm blaming COVID. And I had on my shorts and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I'm
Hmm.
heavier than I was. And I'm like, oh, this is not representing me.
Hmm.
And again, no judgment. Some women just rock it and they look absolutely
Of course.
fabulous.
Right.
That was not for me. It just
Hmm.
wasn't for me. And for me, it's also like I was in decent health, but I didn't want it to go to a level where I
Hmm.
wasn't. So
Hmm.
I said, okay, I'm gonna lose the weight. And I lost the weight for me to represent me,
Hmm.
and I felt absolutely fantastic. And
Hmm.
now it's just a matter of tighten things up a little bit. They
Yeah.
got a little saggy, and and when you get a little older and you let yourself go for so long,
Mhm.
actually you don't even have to be older. You let yourself go for so long. Yeah. So now that's the process. I still want to lose a little bit more, but then really, tighten up and strengthen.
And speaking of, as far as weight gain, weight loss, tell us about your Evict the Fat program.
So I got to tell you why I got the name. So
Hmm.
I was doing a lot of networking calls and they were like, I said, oh, so I sell a program that is exclusively marketed to chiropractors. So it's
Hmm.
a doctor supervised program. And it's called the Chiros program. And it's a great program. And that's what I use. It's the base. But every time I would network it, they'd go, oh, you shouldn't call it weight loss because people get the weight back because they think it's like a loss and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh
Mm.
my God, and I get what they're saying, but I was like, I didn't invent the name. Like that's the product. So then I started saying, what, I'm just going to get myself a catchy name. And I'm like, maybe I could be like the fat Terminator, I'm going to evict your fat, kind of so like that kind of deal. But then I said, no, I'm going to like evict is such a powerful word. So it's like, you evict the fat because that's the problem. The weight really isn't the problem. It's the fat. So
Mhm.
I said, all right, what? I'm going to package it so that I keep that Chirothin weight loss program as the base. Then I added coaching. So we do group coaching sessions
Mhm.
because anybody can lose weight on a diet programs work. People say they don't work. They work. People lose weight all the time. They don't keep them off because they don't change your habits.
Right.
So the coaching piece has to come into play. Plus it gives them the accountability. Like they have to get on a call each week and say to the group, I cheated, or whatever.
Mhm.
So they get in there and they do the program. And so I said, okay, I'm going to call it the fat eviction program because you're going to evict your fat. You're going to get rid of it. You're going to gain your health back. And yeah, you're going to get a weight loss as a side effect.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I call myself the fat eviction specialist. So
Well, I like it because it sounds like, thesaurus.com like came in, we found a new word rather than Terminator. And so for anyone who's interested in being part of the Evict the Fact program, where should they go for more information to join?
So they could go to my website, www.drlorimonaco.com, all lowercase, no periods. And I have a weight loss page, or it says Evict the Fat. And then you
Mhm.
go on there. There's a video that you can watch that explains the program. They're done in 6-week intervals with 7 coaching sessions in that 6-week interval. And they can get more information, or they can sign up, even
Mhm.
better. I have comes on Wednesday night Eastern time, 7 p.m. and then Saturday mornings, 9:30, and then an 11 o'clock slot and all Eastern time. And you could be anywhere. Like I had a client that was living in the Marshall Islands doing this.
No.
And I had to admit where they were because I know a lot of geography, but that threw me off. And I'm like, the Marshall Island. And it was like she was a whole day ahead of me, but we worked it out and she was
Mhm.
on the calls and yeah, so you do it in the comfort of your own place, but you have that accountability piece and you have the tribe. So
Mhm.
yeah, and it's great. I mean, you can lose like 15 to 35 pounds in the 6 weeks.
Wow.
So it's
Well,
pretty effective.
well, Badass
Yeah.
Buddha, aka Dr. Lori Monaco, thank you so much for being vulnerable with us, sharing your journey, and then sharing how you came out of that dark place. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for having me. Thanks, Gabby. I appreciate it.